الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So as we continue discussing Kitab As-Siyam from the book Al-Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah, and today we go straight into where we had stopped, where in the last lesson we had discussed Kitab, we discussed Bab Sawm Yom Ashura. So we had mentioned before that regarding Ashura, that before Islam, that this was of those fasts was deemed to be compulsory, or before Ramadan. So before Ramadan, fasting the day of Ashura, the 10th of Muharram, was considered to be wajib. Then with Ramadan, then this was changed where the fast of Ashura, it still stands as something to be done, but as something which is mustahab, not compulsory as before. And then it was replaced by Ramadan. So that's what we had covered last in that session. And today, inshallah ta'ala, we pick up from the next bab that he titled Siyam Yawm Al-Fitr wal Adha, and also in some it mentioned wal Dahr. Aywa.
Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. The book of fasting the days of Fitr and Adha, and fasting continuously. Yahya related to me from Malik, from Muhammad ibn Yahya ibn Hibban, from Al-A'raj, from Abu Hurairah, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam forbade fasting on 2 days, the day of Fitr and the day of Adha. Yahya related to me from Malik that he used to hear the people of knowledge say, there was no harm in fasting continuously as long as one breaks the fast on the days on which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam forbade fasting, namely the days of Mina, the days of Adha, and the day of Fitr, according to what we have heard. Malik said, this is what I like most out of what I have heard about the matter.
So rahimahullah ta'ala discussed this chapter regarding where he's mentioning of those siyam that are said to be forbidden, those type of siyam that are considered to be forbidden, where he mentioned Bab Siyam Yawm al-Fitr wal Adha wal Dahr, by way of La Yajuz. So these particular days that it is not allowed for one to fast. So he mentioned those 3 days, which the person fasting, one, Yawm al-Fitr, which is considered to be one of the day of Eid, and second, Yawm al-Adha, another day of Eid, and the third that he mentioned here, Ad-Dahr, where a person that he fasts every day on a continuous daily basis, then this fast also is not to be done. So these are of those fasts that are considered to be forbidden, as they mentioned, Hadith the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, Naha and Siyam Yawmain, that the Prophet ﷺ that he forbade the fasting of 2 days, Yawm al-Fitr wa Yawm al-Adha. So based upon this, it is something which is forbidden for one to fast these particular days. So it is to clarify of fasting, there's times that we are not allowed to fast, and he had mentioned some of these days that we are not allowed to fast. So those days are Yawm al-Fitr. So with those days, it's not allowed for a person to fast a compulsory fast. What about way of something being made up? So the person making up a compulsory fast that was missed in Ramadan or for other reasons, the part that is not allowed to be done on Yawm al-Fitr or any day of Eid, whether Fitr or Adha. And also second, regarding these particular days of Eid, Fitr or Adha, that one is not allowed to do any type of tatawwa, any form of non-compulsory siyam, voluntary siyam, and also no form of another. So those days are forbidden for one to carry out any form of fasting. Ibn al-Arabi, he mentioned regarding concerning this matter, he mentioned مسألة قال الإمام وأيام منهي عن صيامها 8 أيام, that there's overall he mentioned that there's 8 days that we're forbidden to fast on those days. So 8 days that we're forbidden to fast on those days. So he mentioned of those 3 أيام, which is أيام المنى. So he mentioned Mina, 3 أيام, so the 3 days of Mina, so those are the days that are attached to Hajj. So the end of Hajj, those days ones are not allowed to fast, the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th. Then he mentioned Yawm al-Eid, which would be those 2 days of Eid, Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, that will make what? 5. Then also he mentioned Yawmul Jummah. So so he mentioned that at times fasting on Yawmul Jummah is forbidden. So he mentioned these days. So 3 days of Mina, 2 days of Eid, 5 Yawmul Jummah, being fasted more so on its own without a reason. So fasting Yawmul Jummah. So he mentioned those days. Then also of those days that are forbidden that the ulama mentioned, they mention Yawmul Shak. So they mention Yawmul Shak. So Yawmul Shak, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned regarding Yawmul Shak is the day before Ramadan. So to be the end, which means that one should not fast Yawm or Yawmain 2 days before the commencement of Ramadan. So those are considered to be Yawmul Shak. So it will be the end of of Shaban. So the end of this month of Shaban, we're not to fast those days based upon the person is as a day of uncertainty. So one should not fast those days. So how many is that? 7. So then another day that is mentioned, which he didn't mention, that or they mentioned that he mentioned that other day is Yawm as-Sabt. Yawm as-Sabt. So a khilaf between the ulama, so a difference between the ulama regarding fasting Yawm as-Sabt by itself, that of the ulama, of those who mentioned, so they mentioned Yawm as-Sabt, is it forbidden or not for a person to fast on a Saturday, for a person to fast on a Saturday? Where they mentioned that a khilaf between the ulama on that particular matter. So overall, those are those 8 days that the author have mentioned that between the ulama, that they hold it is forbidden for one to fast on those days. So 3 days of Ayyamul Mina, while for Hajj, for those who are not at Hajj, also 2 days of Eid, Yawmul Jummah, Yawmul Sabt, and Yawmul Shak. So these are those days that they mention that one is not to fast on those days. Of those days, those which is agreed upon, and those that are some khilaf between the ulama on fasting those days. So Ayyam al-Mina is also referred to as Ayyam al-Tashriq. So those days of Tashriq. So that's concerning that particular matter. Then he mentioned regarding of those fasts that the Prophet ﷺ he forbid, where he mentioned as the title. So as I mentioned in some of the books, they have the title Siyam Yawm al-Fitr, Bab Siyam Yawm al-Fitr, wa Yawm al-Adha, meaning one is not to fast those days. And some of the books it mentioned, as in your book it mentioned, Wad-Dahar, which is the person fasting on a daily basis. The person fasting on a daily basis. So those are the person not allowed to fast daily. So those are those siyam that are considered to be forbidden. So with that, inshallah ta'ala, we'll move to the next discussion that he mentions. And the person fasts those days, he considered to be athim. The person was to intentionally, deliberately fast, especially concerning Yawm al-Fitr or Yawm al-Adha, then that person considered to be athim. And that siyam, if he was to fast or making up a day on Yawm al-Fitr or Yawm al-Adha, then that day does not count. That fasting would not count as a fast and a valid siyam. Aywa?
The day of Shak that you said, if it's on a Monday or Thursday, you're allowed to do it still.
So the ulama mentioned regarding concerning Yawm al-Shak is the day, for example, the person go out and they're uncertain, is today Ramadan or not? So the person should not fast that day. I said ihtiyatan, where the person can fast it because he's trying to be cautious or careful. So called Yawm al-Shak. You're not sure it's today actual because maybe they went out to look and they didn't see it. So tonight is the 29th. So tomorrow could be the 30th of Shaban or it could be the 1st of Ramadan. So there's not to be fast. But if the person that have a normal routine of fasting and that day, for example, it coincides with a Monday. So he got up that day and he fasts Monday because it's Monday. But it so coincide with that day of said Yawm al-Shak, then it is counted for him as fasting on a Monday, not as Yawm al-Shak. Because he has a routine of fasting, for example, every Mondays and every Thursday.
But is it better for him to leave off that day? Even if you fast that regular fast, but leave it that day?
The person of a routine, you understand, then he can still go through with his routine. Because it's a normal routine, a traditional routine of fasting, Mondays and Fridays, but it did coincide. So in that case, you understand, it's left up to him to make that decision. It's up to to the person of that normal routine. So his case would not be one of Yawm Shak. It would be Siyam Yawm Al-Ahad. Or Yawm Al-Ithnain. Yawm Ithnain. Sorry, Yawm Ithnain. Aywa. So it shows regarding concern these matters that even with these matters that Islam, so not every time of every form of fast you consider to be something which is something which you consider to be praiseworthy. So even though the act may be, the person abstaining from certain things, but not every type of siyam is considered to be praiseworthy. So praiseworthy are those ones that fall in line with the Sharia. So you find, so نعم تفضل. So you have days that it's a must to fast. Ramadan, all the days, Then you have certain days that we're not allowed to fast, and you have mentioned some of those days. And also of those days which is clear, it's ijma that we're not allowed to fast those days. Then you have some days that it's under dispute. You understand? Yom Sept, fasting on a Saturday. Or a person fasting, and the person, for example, choose to fast on a Friday, then it should be with the day before or after. So you have that. So you have those days. Some is clear and some under discussion. And also Yom Shak, we said, it depending on the circumstances. The person is doing it, ihtiyat, you want to be cautious and careful. Then that fall into Yom Shak. So that's not to be done. But the person of a normal routine, then he's allowed to fast that day as a part of his routine. Aywa.
The prohibition against fasting for 2 days or more without breaking the fast in between. And Wisal. Yahya related to me from Malik, from Nafi', from Abdullah ibn Umar, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam forbade fasting for 2 days or more without breaking the fast in between. They said, but Messenger of Allah, you practice wisal. He replied, I am not the same as you. I am fed and given to drink. Yahya related to me from Malik, from Abu al-Zinad, from Al-A'raj, from Abu Hurairah, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, beware of wisal, beware of wisal. They said, but you practice wisal, Messenger of Allah. He replied, I am not the same as you. My Lord feeds me and gives me to drink.
Then after the things that he mentioned, of those masail that are discussed between the fuqaha and the ulama, nahi and wisal fi siyam. So the matters they discussed regarding al-wisal, so this act of wisal that he mentioned, nahi. That's what he's mentioned of those cases and scenarios where it is a certain type of fast or ways of how one fast is forbidden. So wisal of the ulama, they discuss concerning who and yasum, yawmain. Yeah, different definitions are given, but somewhat similar. They mentioned that wisal, that who and yasum, Yawmain or Akthar, that a person fasts 2 days or more. Biduna and yuftira, without the person breaking his fast. So the person chooses to fast multiple days without breaking of his fast, then this is referred to as wisal. Without the person eating or the like. So the person not eating or drinking intentionally. So this is wisal. So the person so this is what is referred to as wisal. So the person continuing, going through those days without any form of eating or drinking. But wisal also, the person might have the intention to break his fast at the time that he comes in. But then he he doesn't eat or drink. So they mentioned regarding concerning that, as we mentioned, that the author or the Sharah, Ibn al-Arabi, in this particular, at times he will mention the hadith, cite the hadith, then he discusses them. And at times he doesn't mention the hadith. At times he does not mention the hadith. He just goes straight into the discussion. So he mentioned some of the hadith regarding concerning this matter, where the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, فَإِنَّكَ تُوَاصِلْ, where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned naha and wisal, that he by way of his spoken by way of words, naha and wisal, that the Prophet ﷺ, he forbade the Muslim, forbade that we do this act of wisal as we had described before. Then فَقَالُوا, then the people's response was, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, فَإِنَّكَ تُوَاصِلْ, but you do it. So I mentioned فَقَال إِنِّي لَسْتُ كَهِيَّتُكُمْ فَإِنِّي أُطْعِمْ وَأُسْقَى, that it mentioned that as for myself, that I'm fed and I'm giving things to drink. So the Prophet ﷺ, so they mentioned that this shows that concerning al-wisal for the ummah, a discussion between the ulama, is wisal this act of this delaying, breaking of the fast, continuous fasting, that is what's the ruling pertaining to it. So they have mentioned of this matter that regarding concerning al-wisal, that Ibn Qudama al-Hanbali in his book al-Mughni, he mentioned al-wisal makruh fi qawl akthar ahli al-ilm, that wisal is considered to be something which is makruh, something which is disliked amongst the majority of the ulama, amongst the majority of the ulama. And also An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned amma al-hukm al-wisal, as for the ruling pertaining to wisal, qal fahuwa makruh, it is something which is disliked bila khilaf. Indana bila khilaf, indana meaning concerning, so there's no difference. We said indana, what does he meant? An-Nawawi in the imma al-Shafi'iyya. So sometimes when I mention indana, we might either it could mean indana the ulama, meaning ijma between all the ulama, or at times of those who write on a particular madhab, that they'll mention indana meaning us, or they may say ijma indana, there's a consensus with us, meaning us of our madhab. So sometimes to understand the language of the ulama, that at times they are discussing those within their madhab, their school of thought, not per se that they are mentioning, it is inclusive of all the ulama, but more so they are discussing what is within their madhab. So An-Nawawi rahimahullah mentioned amma al-hukm al-wisal fahuwa makruh bila khilaf indana. Then he mentioned وهل هي قراها تحريم أو تنزيه. So with the ulama of usul al-fiqh and the ulama fiqh regarding him, so he discussed another matter, extension of the matter, it is makruh. But makruh to what level? So makruh, something which is disliked, they either describe something which is disliked as either makruh tahrimi, that it is makruh, dislike by way of haram, it is forbidden. So it is completely forbidden. But I mentioned makruh tahrim or makruh tanzih. Makruh at-tanzih, meaning concerned today, it is disliked. It is something which is disliked, but not completely forbidden, but something which is disliked and shunned. So that's concerning makruh tanzih. So you have makruh tahrim or makruh tanzih. So the difference between both. So he discussed concerning the ulama, they disagree regarding, is it makruh tahrim or makruh tanzih, completely disliked, forbidden, or something which is disliked. Then he mentioned asahuma inda ashabina, that what is more correct with our ashab, meaning ashab al-Shafi'iyya. He mentioned, as this book that he's discussing this matter, Majmu' Sharh Mu'adhab, is a book of the fiqh of the Shafi'iyya. So he mentioned that what is more correct with the ulama of the Shafi'iyya, according to their position, that وَهُوَ ظَاهِرٌ nas al-Shafi'i, what is the apparent position of Imam Shafi'i, karahiyya at-tahrim, that is something which is considered to be tahrim, which is forbidden. So you have the discussion, he mentioned that the ulama that all concerned is something which is like of those of the Shafi'iyya, that they are more inclined towards it is forbidden for a person to do wisal, which I've said, delaying, breaking off our fasting for a few days, fasting for several days without eating in between, Also from the hadith I mentioned, a wisal which is jaiz, between the ulama, is for a person to delay fasting until later on in the evening or later. So the person doesn't break his fast at sunset, but he may leave it until later in the evening, but he doesn't go until the next day. Now, so for example, the person, we break fast at 7 o'clock. Just say we break fast at 7 o'clock. So the person didn't break his fast, but continue until 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. Then he decided to break his fast and eat.
Ibadatan.
Amdan. So they said that's allowed. That is allowed. So that part, that he gave some concession regarding that type of wisal. Then they mentioned the third matter that is mentioned, that the Prophet ﷺ, that fourth matter, as Islam mentioned, inni lestu kahiyatukum, that I'm not similar to you. Mention a discussion as mentioned, they mentioned regarding the Prophet ﷺ, when they mentioned that he's not like that, he's not similar to us. He's not similar to us. That what is intended by this, what is intended by this. So you have, they said the ulama, they are considered ta'wil. They have different type of ta'wilat, how to explain this sentence. But the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, I'm not like you, as I'm fed and I'm giving things to drink. So what does he mean by this? Now, of those who mentioned that what is meant that he's fed and giving things to drink, that what is meant, وَذَلِكَ حَقِيقَةً. That this is something which is, it is haqiqa, it is reality, it is the real situation, it is real, where he was fed and given something to drink. They said, but that view, it is said, هَذَا فَاسِد. That opinion is something which is not valid opinion. Meaning that, he was fed haqiqatan, realistically, that he was giving food and drink. So he said, now if he was giving food and drink, then his fasting is invalid. So to explain that he was giving food and drink is not physical food and drink. Because they say haqiqatan, they mean that he was giving food and drink, physical food and drink. And so they said, no, that doesn't hold. That opinion doesn't hold. Because he's discussing regarding wisal, and wisal is delaying eating and drinking. So that opinion, they mentioned that, even some may have mentioned his opinion, but it does not hold. It does not, it's not a valid opinion. Another way or ulama have explained, a way this they mention regarding concerning that they mentioned that kinaya. That the second, another meaning mentioned kinaya, where regarding concern that, that regarding concern the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have created him in a way which is concerning a level of quwwah. So his strength, that is able to carry this act through without being affected of thirst and hunger, that is something where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was able to make him regarding this matter, that he was able to have that strength where he was able to manage wisal. He was able to manage wisal. So they mentioned it, and then if that's the case, and that more seemed the more correct view, so it's not physical food, but he was given that strength and the ability where the Prophet ﷺ was able to withstand wisal, not breaking of fast, not eating for several days when he practiced it. So they mentioned that this would now go into the matter where it becomes one of the things which is of his khasa'is. So those things that are classed, that is of the matters that are said to be specific to the Prophet ﷺ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him this and none others from this ummah, where he was able to endure wisal. So that's concerning of those matters of those things that are, so this would be classed as something which is specific to the Prophet ﷺ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given him regarding being able to manage and and see through this act of wisal without being affected. So that's concerning what is mentioned regarding this particular matter. So you find that even this matter regarding concerning things that are particular to the Prophet ﷺ, you have books on this. So you have Suyuti as a book, Qasais al-Kubra, that goes in about that goes into volumes. Somewhat thing that he have mentioned, some of those things need to be reviewed, or to be mindful of the thing that he mentioned. So he mentioned a lot of things, but some of those things, as Suyuti sometime in his book, he is a one who's said a gatherer. Not one who's somewhat he gather information, but sometimes the information needs to be processed and sieved through properly. But he mentioned things that are said to be khasais al-kubra in this book, many things that relate to the Prophet ﷺ regarding, and you have others who have written on this topic, even contemporaries, but also an interesting topic.
Does he bring sanad of what he mentions in that book? Does
he bring sanad?
Yeah.
So the book is have two prints, one without isnad, and it's like a muqtasar, by one of the mashaykh, I forgot, we remove the isnad, but the original one, original Davan isnad, you have one print out of isnad. So you have one with isnad and one without a sanad. The one with isnad printed a couple of years ago or been printed of recent. But the one that were maybe more common was the one without the isnad. I think by Abdul Razak Afifi, that did that, the printing, if my memory serve well. But one of the mashaykh from Misr, from Ansar al-Sunnah. So that's concerning that discussion regarding So go to the next matter that he mentions.
Fasting on account of manslaughter or for pronouncing the vihar form of divorce. Yahya related to me, and I myself heard Malik say, the best that I have heard about someone who has to fast for 2 consecutive months because of having killed someone by mistake or having pronounced the vihar form of divorce, becoming very ill and having to break his fast, is that if he recovers from his illness and is strong enough to fast, he must not delay doing so. He continues his fast from where he left off. Similarly, a woman who has to fast because of having killed someone by mistake should not delay resuming her fast when she has become pure after her period. She continues her fast from where she left off. No one who, by the book of Allah, has to fast for 2 consecutive months may break his fast except for reason of illness or menstruation. He must not travel and break his fast. Malik said, this is the best that I've heard about the matter.
So after Imam Malik rahimahullah, he discussed also another matter regarding ahkam al-siyam, al-siyam alladhi yaqtul qata'an aw tatadahir. So he mentioned regarding concerning of those matters that relate to siyam is the case regarding that which relates to the matter of the person who have some form of expiation to be fulfilled, and that expiation that because of certain thing that was done, so the act was done, that a person may have to fast 2 consecutive months. So the one who have an expiation for certain things that are for reasons, then and the expiation it is fasting shahrain mutatabi'in, the person fasting 2 months, so fasting of 2 months. Then as we had discussed before, that when it mentioned 2 months consecutive, that when the person start the fasting of those 2 months, then he has to continue through until he ends. But unless he has a valid reason to break that, then you just continue. So he mentioned this case regarding of those cases. So the ulama mentioned that you have 3 halat, you have 3 situations that a person may have to fast 2 consecutive months. You have 3 situations. So they mentioned 2 right here, and the third was mentioned before.
You mentioned it in the class.
Hey, you mentioned it.
Ramadan.
Hey, Ramadan. Hey, sir.
Oh yeah, طبعا.
Hey.
طبعا.
So, Hey, so intercourse, so intimacy. So you mentioned regarding, so you have 3 situations that a person might find himself in, and after the we said in a kafara as a form of compensation for those acts, the person that they have to fast for 3 months, fast 2 months consecutive. So we mentioned that, Allah mentioned that one here concerning, he said manslaughter. So a person caused the death of someone unintentionally, qata'an. So I had mentioned regarding concerning in fiqh that in a bab of hudud, that regarding concerning the murder of a person's life being taken, then it falls in different categories. Now, amdan, a person was killed intentionally. And then you have the next category, which is with of the ulama. So you have different categories that they place it under. You have amd, intentionally, khata in this case, so unintentionally, out of error, mistake. Then you have in between, shibl amd, that, and then the likes. So they mentioned here regarding concerning that the case where a person may have bring about the death of someone unintentionally. Where the person didn't intend to kill that person. So I threw the book through the window, just threw the book through the window, and it fell on someone else and they died. So the person didn't intend anything harmful, intend to do anything harmful to someone. But you throw the book through the window and it fell on someone else and they died. So someone died, so the Sharia, so when it reads, so some concepts, so that matter now have to be looked, or there's some compensation for this. So even though it was done unintentionally, out of error, so some form of compensation within the Sharia. So of those things, they mentioned that the person free a slave, but if the person unable, that they'll go to, which is the next state. The next step would be that a person he fasts 2 consecutive months. So fasting for 2 consecutive months. So in that case, so generally concerning killing a person unintentionally, or bringing about the cause and the death of someone unintentionally, then the person will fast 2 months. We said, that when he starts, he has to continue through. For him to break that sequence, it must be due to a valid reason. And this will apply to a male or a female. With a female, if they go through their cycle, then they can fast. So they have a valid reason. Or the valid reason be Ayyam al-Eid. So in that case, the person, Juma, Yom al-Sabt, wouldn't wouldn't apply to them. But the one what apply to them would be Ayyam al-Eid, both Eids, or for female or menses, or it could be marad, the person is ill. Then all my discuss regarding concerning traveling. But I mentioned that a person have a legitimate reason for travel, then he's allowed. So for travel also, so if he was to travel, and it mentioned فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيدًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. So the Sharia give a person as a valid reason to break his fast if he travels and if he's ill. So those would be legitimate reason for a person to break off his fast during that 2 month situation. Then we mentioned the second case would be, as I mentioned here, zihar. So zihar is a man saying that my wife is like the back of, comparing your wife to the back of your mother. So a person that resembling his wife to the back of his mother, then this is considered to be zihar. Then after compensation for this, then a person have to fast 2 consecutive months. Then also the third case would be a case concerning al-jima' fi nihar or Ramadan. The person who have intimacy with his wife, or yada billah, his girlfriend, or anyone else. So we said ordinarily we say this applies to intimacy between a man and a man and a woman in general. So the rule apply. If it is your wife, you have done something haram and sinful, and the compensation will be for the person, if both were part of it, to fast 2 consecutive months. And ulama mentioned that this, as we stated before, that if it was in the front or the back. So the penetration, front or back? Front or back? If it's a girlfriend, or that's being real, that's the reality. If it's a girlfriend, a person that he has a baby mother as a girlfriend and wants to have intimacy with her during Ramadan, then this also counts. Then the person falls into the same category. So he has done now a double wrong. He has now done a double wrong. So overall, that a person have intimacy in Ramadan, then this is the compensation, which is siyam shahrain mutatabi'ain, that they fast 2 consecutive months. So that's concerning the ahkam that relates to this. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, that he mentioned regarding concerning some of these masail, and also when one is when one has one have a legitimate reason to break off it, and then they just continue after. As we discussed before regarding concerning the previous maybe few chapters, that the ulama discussed regarding concerning that in the case of intimacy in Ramadan, the day that you did the act. So the thing that, for example, the person, just clarity, if just say on the 7th day of Ramadan, the person wants to do this act, iyadu billah, intimacy, in the morning. It occurred in the morning. So from that point, his siyam for that day is invalid. But then the person the same day went back again. So in the person for that act, he has that compensation to be done sometime in the future. To be done. Then if he was to repeat the same act on the same day, does we add another 2 months to his time? Do we add another 2 months to his time? The ulama mentioned that they don't know. Of those who mentioned yes, but overall, they are more inclined that no. Because the act, you understand, he had even though it's a repeated act, on this, because on the same day, then it only counts, you only make up for 1 day. But the person will do another day, then also again it adds. So each day, it adds. Unless you want to be Abdul Mutashaddid, that kind of somewhat, every occasion, then you count. So you might find that in certain cases that the person being very complacent And some want to be mutashaddid. Now, you might take sometimes a weak view because you just want to make it difficult for the person. You see that person being, as I said, very complacent. Now, so sometimes an alim might give a fatwa on a matter that he may have a different opinion. He may take a different opinion ordinarily, but he may be aware of an opinion that is not per se his first choice opinion. It may be a weak opinion in his view, but he may take to the opinion because he wants to make things difficult for a person who he believes that person is being too complacent. So sometimes those are done for those reasons, where Ali might take a weaker view for a reason, but ordinarily he may not agree with that view or accept that view, but due to circumstance. أيوة.
Illness and the fast. Yahya said that he heard Malik say, "What I have heard from the people of knowledge is that if a man succumbs to an illness which makes fasting very difficult for him and exhausts him and wears him out, he can break his fast. This is the same as the case of a sick man in the prayer who finds standing to be too difficult and exhausting. In brackets, and Allah knows better than the slave that it is an excuse for him. And other matters which are not described. If someone is in such a condition, he prays sitting, and the deen of Allah is ease. Allah has permitted a traveller to break the fast when travelling, and he has more strength for fasting than a sick man. Allah the Exalted says in His book, "But any of you who are ill or on a journey should fast a number of other days." Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 185. And Allah has thus permitted a traveller to break his fast when on a journey, and he is more capable of fasting than a sick man. This is what I most prefer of what I had heard, and it is the practice of which there is consensus among us.
So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala then discussed another chapter of Kitab al-Siyam, Bab Ma yaf'al al-marid fi siyami. So discussing concerning the case of a person who's marid, a person who's ill. So what are those concessions, or what is allowed during this time of illness regarding siyam? So a person who's ill but is in the month of Ramadan or is to fast, then what are the ruling pertaining to such a circumstance? So he mentioned regarding concerning that with Islam didn't come per se, even with siyam, come to make things difficult. So even with the ahkam of siyam is not to make things overly difficult upon the people. That siyam is an act of ibadah, and not kind of somewhat to make things difficult on the people. So based upon this, that with the ahkam of siyam, you have cases where some people are exempt from fasting. So the ahkam of siyam, an act of ibadah, and with this also, it have taken into consideration that people of different circumstance and situation. So as we had mentioned before, regarding concern a person to fast, that Islam, the person those who are required to fast, then also it finds certain criteria that are in place. And of those criteria, the person who is qadir, was sahih, that a person regarding concerning his physical health, that a person is able. So of this, that it mentions that a person who is not physically able, where he be deemed as ill. The person is deemed as ill, or a person that not physically able because of his age. Of his age, so those people are exempt. So in this case, the person who is said to be marid, that is exempted regarding this matter, and also the Quran also specified this matter. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيدًا, that a one from amongst you is marid regarding siyam, أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ, meaning that these people that they are exempt. So Imam Shafi rahimahullah, Imam Malik rahimahullah then discussed regarding that, so the matter regarding they're exempt. Now the matter that is discussed between the ulama, the person who is exempt, or the person who is given this exemption not to fast because of an illness, to what degree of that illness? To what degree of illness? So as we know concerning those illness where the person, so I mentioned that a person who's ill who is unable. Even an example concerning as something to work with, that is the person that is unable to sit for salah. So the person that is unable to stand which is one of the things of the salat, which of the arkan of salah, that a person has to stand, but he's unable, so he sits. So the Sharia have given a person an excuse due to his inability to stand for the salat, and allow the person to sit or to pray in the situation that pray in the state that he's able. So that shows concern. So they mentioned the same thing applies to the person regarding siyam. Same thing regarding the siyam. In relation to siyam. So highlighting the matter regarding the Sharia, I've given this the person who is considered to be marid, that I've given the person that choice for the person not to fast. So the person have that choice not to fast. So the ulama mentioned regarding, so he mentioned, so the person is allowed not to fast due to illness. The discussion between the ulama, as we mentioned the ayah, can I make it very clear? فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيدًا, that a person who is ill. So the person who is ill is now exempt or given. So the issue between the ulama is concerning, as he mentioned here, أَمَّا مَرَض, as for this case, this illness, فَهُوَ أَمْرٌ مُنْضَبِطٌ, is something which is of guidelines that they mention. So how does one decide regarding which illness is considered giving a person the ability not to fast, or giving the person the exemption not to fast, and under which illness where the person may have an illness but he still should fast. So you have different level of illnesses. So they mentioned that if the illness, so they mentioned, كُلُّ أَحَدْ عَالَمْ بِنَفْسِهِ, that everyone kind of somewhat know best regarding his situation, his illness. But if a person is getting prepared his suhoor in the morning and cut his finger when he is cutting the apples, is that an illness for the person not to fast? Now, so you have certain illness where the person may have certain illness where it doesn't forbid the person from fasting, because it's sometimes said very minor illness. Now the person, as we say, he bucked his toe. Now, you know that word? You know what I mean, huh?
Stub his toe.
What?
Stub your toe.
Stub his toe? Okay, buck his toe, we say. So the person hurt his foot. So the person, the night before, he's playing football, and he got a little, what do you call it? Injury from his playing football. Now, someone elbowed him or someone kicked him. You understand? So he can't able to walk properly, but he still can function. Now, so is that an illness that will justify the person not to fast? So it varies. Now, then you have those illnesses that I mentioned, that so generally concerning illness with a person, that if a doctor have instructed a person not to fast, then that should be counted. From a doctor who is credible, more preferable Muslim, but it's not a Muslim doctor, a doctor who is said to be a credible doctor. Then also the person will consult with someone of ilm. So you have an illness, then the person will be exempted because of that type of illness. That if the person was to fast, it will make his situation worse. The person wants to fast, it makes his situation worse. So certain people on a medication, they are on a certain type of medication, and not taking that medication, and they have to take their medication at certain set times during the day, and that will so they have to take their medication at set time during the day, and that will mean the person will take it while during the time of fasting. Those cases, if the person not taking that medicine, will make their situation worse or delay their recovery. Not taking that medication will make their situation worse or delay their recovery. Then that person have a right not to fast. That person can fast. There's a legitimate reason for the person to not fast. Now, I will mention the person that those might have a terminal illness case, where in that case I said the person fasting may be upon him haram. The person fasting on that case he may be sinful for fasting. Now, because it making his situation even more worse. Now, so that's concerning those matters. You have certain cases where it will go back to the person. It will go back to the person that a person might have a headache. A person have migraine, headache. Now, then is he able to can bear this? Now, he may have an hour or a few before he break fast. And sometimes the person might have migraine by not eating, may cause the headache, the migraine. Now, but he might have a few hours or hour. Is he able to can bear it or not? Or he has a headache from the early start in the day, and it will go last for many hours. Then, in that case, said the person become the tabib of himself. He become the doctor of himself to make that call as to break the fast or not. Now, so certain cases go back to the person. They can consult with others of ilm, but at the end it will be for them to make that call. And he mentioned that regarding concerns this of the ease of Islam. So this of the ease of Islam. Regarding concern that Islam is not to make things difficult. So things that are find things of difficulty, then the person, Islam doesn't request the person to or require the person to make things difficult on themselves, but rather even acts of ibadah that they're concessions, and exempt in case their people are exempt due to situation and circumstance of this al-marad. So you might find concern that, and I even mentioned that the person who's traveling, that is case compared to the person sick, then maybe the person who's sick is not as his case may be as dire as that of the person, or the person who's traveling case may not be as dire. The person who's traveling, his case not as severe as that of the person who's ill. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have given a person, whether they are sick or a person who's traveling, that they are able to can make up their fast depending on their situation and how the level of degree of their illness. So that's concerning this matter that is mentioned here. And also find that Imam Malik rahimahullah in this particular book. So instead of the book that he kind of mentioned as he mentioned that وهو أقوى آلا صوم من المريض. And I mentioned وهذا أحب ما سمعت إلي وهو أمر مجمع عليه. So he mentioned also from this last sentence وهذا أحب ما سمعت إلي, that of the things that have come to my attention that I've heard, that means Imam Malik rahimahullah, then he can somewhat like ulama, that he respected of the aqwal of the ulama who preceded him, and take those things into consideration, that he's not just saying certain things from his own accord, but things that he has overheard or mentioned, discussed by the ulama who preceded him, or of those of his time that are considered to be of his seniors. So it should concern the ulama that at times that the ulama that they understand and respect the aqwal of the ulama, the statement of the ulama who have preceded them, and also would highlight regarding what they have heard and what they are more inclined to from what have been mentioned by those of the ulama before them. Then they mention وَهُوَ أَمْرٌ مُجْمَعَ عَلَيْهِ مُجْتَمَعَ. I mentioned مُجْتَمَعَ عَلَيْهِ, that this is something which is مُجْتَمَعَ عَلَيْهِ, indicated also that this matter concern of ijma. So indicating that matter with the ulama have agreed upon, then it should be something that we fall in line with. That or majority of the ulama is of that view, then we should not ignore the aqwal of the ulama. So from this also it shows that for a person not to ignore the ulama who have preceded us. So being aware of the aqwal of the ulama, of those who have preceded us, then that is vital regarding the journey of the talib al-ilm. Not to think himself, or the talib to think himself that he knows it all. And he's, as they say, is Ibn Taymiyyah of his time. Not for a person to think that he's Ibn Taymiyyah and to start to make up things on his own, but for the talib al-ilm that he ensure that he speaks from what has been mentioned by the ulama. He speaks from what has been mentioned by the ulama, not to bring about ideas that are somewhat strange, and no one has preceded him in this matter. So that's concerning this matter. We'll end with this, and we see if we have the next time to continue. But the main idea that to discuss concerning aqwal of Ramadan and the using of the books of the ulama, even a chapter, which is the book that we have chosen, or was chosen, the book of Imam Malik rahimahullah, which is called Al-Muwatta, one of the early books in Hadith, where Imam Malik rahimahullah, with this book, it has a selection of things that he has collected, which is the Ahadith Nabawiyah, and also Athar al-Salaf, from the Sahaba and the likes and the Aqwal, and also things that he have heard from the ulama, and also his conclusion on certain things that are being discussed by the ulama. So it's a important and also considered a very important book regarding the books of Hadith, as we had mentioned, that of the three books that the ulama of the books of Hadith, that the ulama have given a lot of attention regarding explanation and the works around it. We mentioned three books of Hadith that we've given a lot of attention. What are those three books? Hada, okay, I can give away that one. Same Malik book, we have a lot of explanation and work around it. Then you have Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. So those three books, Sahihain, Bukhari and Muslim, a lot of work around those two books because of the status of those two books. And also another being the book of Imam Malik rahimahullah al-Muwatta, that the ulama, you have many explanation. Across the fiqh of ulama of the past, and even up until contemporaries who still have work around the book of Muwatta. So it shows regarding concerning that an important book for what it contains. And inshallah ta'ala, at some point, maybe one day, that inshallah ta'ala, that we're able maybe to discuss the book from start to end, from beginning to end, bid'illah ta'ala. So that inshallah ta'ala, that we have covered some items or some matters, a portion of the book, or this Kitab al-Siyam. Hopefully we forget, and next time we'll complete it. Billahi ta'ala tawfiq wa hadhihi as-sabila.